Hey folks, Eshin Lacoste here from All Wyse Transformation. And as always, the conversation continues around mental health, self-care, and the spiritual practice. And today I have a really awesome guest with me, Ricardo Francis. How are you?
I'm good. I needed to get hydrated a little bit, but I'm
Hydration,
good.
hydration is good. Um, so Ricardo, you're an artist, right?
I am.
And
Yes.
an artist in the New York area.
Yes, I
Uh,
am.
Brooklyn?
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I love Brooklyn, but when I first moved to New York, I lived in Brooklyn for about a year, and then I moved to Queens, then to Manhattan and Washington Heights, which is where I'm at now. Did move to, but I in between that time, I moved to Jersey City for about 13, 14 years. And then I moved back to Washington Heights here in Manhattan.
Nice. Love
Yeah,
Jersey City, by the way, because
me too.
my folks are in Newark. Um, so I usually start off these segments or these interviews by asking folks, Ricardo, what are you interested in? What gets your curiosity going these past couple of days?
I would say my interactions with people for the past couple of days have been interesting. And that's has both personally and artistically inspired me. I think oftentimes, sometimes dealings with people can be complex, and you're not sure where exactly though that person is or where they're standing or whatnot with you. Um, and then others are it's very definitive where you're at with that person or whatnot. So I feel like I'm dealing with both sides of the coin to some degree, which is interesting. So I hope that answers your answers your question.
Yeah, I'm just always curious about what people are curious about these days, right? I think for me, I've been really curious about how do people make moves? Like how do people just, we were sort of like talking off air, like how do people like make a transition from one area? And I know it's like oh, looking for a job and checking out the area and but it's like what is that spark that says okay I'm ready to make a move, and is it sometimes it's life circumstances, sometimes you have to make the move, but like
Yeah.
when you have the privilege, um how do you know how do you know it's and again and maybe it's a naive question, but I'm always curious about like how do people know when it's time for them to sort of make a move or make a change or do something completely out of their playbook.
Their spirit tells them first. And I think for anyone, whether they're spiritually enlightened or not, spirit conscious, whatever one calls it, it not only tells them, it shows them, it puts pictures in their head of the scenario for them. Um, Oftentimes, the brain will look at the circumstances of what's being shown to them in their conscious, and it oftentimes says it's the right choice. But then what ends up happening is that the mind then also gets in the way and it says, but I've got this, and I'd leave my job, or it even becomes more complicated if there's a partner or family or marriage or this, any other, or business. So I can't exactly say what the best way in which to approach making a move. I know for me, as a child, I knew I wanted to move to New York. It was a pretty clear, picture in my head. I'd read about New York, you look at movies, TV shows, whatnot. Mind you, I realize movie and TV shows only show but so much, and it's not really real. And even as a child, I knew that. But I wanted, there was something deep within my conscience that said, I want to experience the city, even if it was for a few years or so, just to say I did it. My first year here was horrendous. I had very little money, and I struggled to make it. However, oddly enough, there were still opportunities that were there that I was able to optimize on. And so after that 1 year mark, when I was deciding maybe I should move back to Texas, deciding other more doors opened sort of automatically, one after the other, and after the other, after the other. And I realized it's like if I leave here, it would be too early, and it just would not be the right decision to make. So I chose to stay.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
never lived in New York, but I had that inkling. I remember the first time I visited New York. I think I was in my late teens, maybe. It was probably like 19, 18 or something like that. And I was in the village, and I
Hmm.
came across I think it was a newspaper or magazine. I think it was called The Village, or like it's a
Village Voice.
The Village Voice. Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was a newspaper, right? Wasn't it a
It's like
newspaper?
it was a
Yeah, and
weekly newspaper. Yeah.
I remember like seeing this, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" I think I was in like in some store or bookstore or something like that,
Yeah.
flipping through it, and I just remember just like articles about artists, articles of things going on in the city. It was just so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is interesting. And that's when I was like, oh, maybe I might move to New York. It never happened because I mostly was like a club kid, sort of party kid.
Hmm. Hmm.
Traveling on the PATH train between New York and the city back and forth,
Hmm.
and then I ended up in Vermont, and so I that particular fantasy never happened. So Ricardo, what kind of artist are you?
Oh, that's always the hardest question to answer. I would say I am a mixed media painter slash collagist. Um, I My themes are mostly about people. I will dabble sometimes in still life and or abstract painting, but for the most part, I'm a portraitist. I love painting people. And I love painting black and brown people. Um, I would say most of my themes are dealing with black and brown male identity, especially when it comes to sexuality. And feel I need to comment on that oftentimes in my work because that is what I am as a person, as a human being. And I think that oftentimes our stories are misconstrued by the media. So I wish to show a very human, very complex, very individualistic view of how we view the world, view ourselves, and how people may view us as well. And I love juxtaposing things that people see or perceive of others. All of that is in the work. All of that is a part of the narrative of what I do.
The thing I enjoy about your artwork is that it always feels like, for me, it always feels like you're catching somebody in the moment, right? Like
Hmm.
they're coming out of the shower, and it's like, oh, capture that moment, or they're sort of sitting down and sort of looking over their shoulder, and it's sort of like capturing that moment, or some of the
Hmm.
portraits of the men where they're just so exposed, where it's sort of like, oh, you see me?
Hmm.
There's something very about peekabooish. You're like, oh, I see you, kind of feel to it, and it also has sort of like this very sort of like Caribbean feel, lots of light. I feel like there's lots of light in like, in not necessarily intense colors, but these very vibrant colors that seem to be moving in like a
Hmm.
very sort of oceany. Is that a word? Ocean.
Not sure. I don't think so, but hey, a lot of words are being made up nowadays, so sure. We'll go with it.
But when you're looking at creating a piece, what catches your eye, or what's the process that you go through to be like, huh, okay, this needs to go down, or does it start off in your imagination, and then sort of go from there?
It's a mix of different things. Sometimes I can see a person in public and they're very striking. And if I can approach them and I will ask, I do this, I'm a painter, it's any other, and ask. Um, Oftentimes also it's stuff I see online. I utilize that as well. And also there's people like that I do know or friends or this, any other. And I would say, I have this idea. I think you would be perfect for it. And I explain as thoroughly as I can what I wish to do. And it's easier with friends, I think, because they already have a understanding of what I do. So it's not like I have to sell them the idea per se. It's just more of a matter of just scheduling them when they can post for me, and then I will take photo shoots, with my phone. Um, I wish I could work from life more. It's actually easier to do that, but oftentimes, because of time and because the process of what I do takes a long time to do, it is easier to take photos. And with that, I can very easily, I'll I'll just, usually the paintings or drawing starts with the figure or figures if there's more than one, and whatever setting that they're in. And then all the collaging and juxtaposition of different symbols and whatnot all just happen. And this is where I allow the work to tell me and inform me what it wants. I try very hard, very much rather, to not think. I try very much in the process to allow the piece to just do its thing and stay out of its way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So is it that same philosophy? It's just that the art is there, you just have to reveal it compared to you creating it in the sense of um like a piece of marble, like the sculpture is already in the marble and the artist
Mhm.
just has to sort of get it out of there. Is that the same for you when you sort of say you get out of the way and you let the art speaks to you?
Pretty much for me. So I've been able to do that now because I've had a long period of time of technically getting to a place to where I feel completely uh at ease with with drawing and painting. And I think all artists, especially those that operate within the aspect of painting and drawing, you go through a period where you're learning how to do it. You're technically becoming more proficient at things. And it gets to a point to where you don't think anymore. Now, I would say when I started, especially with what people know of my work now, was in 2011, and I still was figuring out technically how to draw and how to paint. I would say about 10 years ago, roughly a little over 10 years ago to 2014, I did a big show called Turn of the Century. It started in Houston and it traveled to Brooklyn eventually. And for me, it was like a catharsis of where I was at technically and conceptually. And I felt like even in the process of making that work, the work was maturing with each piece I was making. I still was at times technically like, how do you do this? And I wasn't fully where I felt completely at peace with my hand, or my hands, I should say, with making my work. It wasn't until, I mean, I'm 48 now. It wasn't until 2 years ago where I was like, I'm in cruise control. And so it became a lot easier to not think conceptually about what I was doing. And the whole idea of standing back and allowing the process, the work itself to do the work for you became painfully clear. So for me, it's a lot more fun to be in the studio. It's a lot more fun in the process. And there's moments where it's like, this is a mistake. I need to correct this, that, and the other, but it doesn't become like this, like, kind of thing. It's more like you just erase or paint over, and it's not a big deal anymore. Yeah.
Um, so I was sort of like stalking you a little bit. And
Why?
and because because you did an interview with the Brooklyn Historical Society interview.
Oh wow,
Uh,
that was a long time ago.
yeah, I think 2016. I believe that the stamp, the copyright stamp, right? And
Hmm.
I didn't listen to the whole interview, but there was something that you said in there that really sort of, stood out for me, right? Like it was the connection to family, and then you mentioned being a latchkey kid, and I was like, oh yeah, I was a latchkey kid too, and
Yeah.
I'm curious about like growing up, what were some of the things that sort of like either inspired you or captivated you or sort of made you curious growing up as a little artist.
Um, Books really inspired me. There was a library that was in our house. I oftentimes was there for hours at a time. And you know, when I was time to do my homework, I usually did it in there. Um, and I deeply believed that through books, through learning, you learn about the world, yourself, consciousness, everything. I think I probably came already as like a little 40-year-old person, you know, already. And so I was under the impression that, you know, try to get as much information as possible and also just explore the world. When I was a teenager, I would go to different types of events, mostly artistic, of course, openings, any other, because I knew that it was important that I knew who the people were in the art scene, and this is back home in Houston, the players, those that are part of the equation, the artists, everybody. And at that time, also, I was with four other friends of mine. We shared an art studio at Midtown Arts Center in the third ward where I grew up. And eventually, after a year of doing that, we were offered a large classroom at the Multicultural Education and Counseling Through the Arts, or MECA for short, and the Old Sixth Ward, which is literally right smack next to downtown Houston. Um, and I realized that similar to something Leontine Price had said about her voice, um, that it's her passport to everywhere in the world. And so for me, I see my art as that. Anything I need to do in life, that is my official passport. I mean, I have my American passport to be able to go from country to country, but in order to really exist in life, my work, my art is really my passport to everything that I do. So I submit to it, and I've been stable as a person, mentally, spiritually, and physically. I'm intrigued, of course, again by humanity. I'm intrigued by people, and so I'm one of those, like a foodie would sit up and say, "I'll try something once to see if I like it." So that's my thinking on as a child growing up in Houston. That's how I approached life as best I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in thinking about mental health, spiritual practice, and self-care, to your comfort level, how do those play factors? Is there a practice that you do? Was there a practice that you used to have? Where are you in to your comfort level about sharing mental health, spiritual practice, and self-care?
So I do believe that one needs to have a physical activity that they do because the body needs that physically. Love long walks. That's something that it is a must for me. I do need to return back to the gym. And I don't need to be He-Man or anything. By going there, it is just for me, especially as a type 1 diabetic. It is a good thing for the body to be moving and doing things, you know, lifting weights or being on the treadmill or doing aerobics. Those things are good for diabetics to thrive physically and to keep, blood sugar levels leveled and whatnot. So that will be for me something I will be doing moving forward. I would say mentally being in quiet, shutting out everything, and allowing just like for me a day. I try to each day to usually on the weekends to have either Saturday or Sunday where I don't do I do absolutely nothing.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it might be some errands, there might be
Yeah,
some little things outside I
yeah,
may
yeah,
have to do,
yeah.
but it's oftentimes
There's no
on that day.
there's no commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Just
love
me and YouTube or Netflix. Yeah.
What is on your Netflix watch right now?
Um, I think the last thing was the show Evil. Okay, that should.
Priest, right? With the priest?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes. I think Mike Coulter,
yeah.
who
Yes.
is very nice to look at, by the way.
Very, very, very nice to look.
I do like that. I do like that show a lot because it went into some very dark themes about spirituality, but it did it in a very sophisticated way. Um, and it's written in a way in which it doesn't take a side fully. So I thought that was really cool,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because it sort of borders like this could happen
Hmm.
or was this all in my head, right? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because it really borders that line like, oh, is this my trauma coming back to sort of like
Yeah.
haunt me or
Yeah.
and it
Exactly.
very much borders that line which I think they do like a really especially the first season. I think they do a really good job
Yeah.
skirting that line.
Yeah. I think in some episodes they hammer things a bit too much as it got later and later and later, but it was an important show for anyone to see, whether they are deeply spiritual or not. There are things that are around spiritually. I do believe in they help shape people's minds and perspectives on things all the time. And people create things, what is it? I think George Michael has a song "The Monkey on My Back," and it talks. That's really a code for heroin use or not, or drugs. And it's people make up demons all the time, So I think spirituality also is a thing where maybe it's better to not think of it in such sort of deep, dark, Catholic or what people typically see on TV or whatnot, but see it also as the perspectives and choices people make just in life in general, and the cause and effect of one's choices, especially with dealing with other people, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
I try to see it more from that perspective as much as as best I can. Um,
yeah.
but I also think as an artist, whatnot, there's probably things that that's in my mind and my consciousness. It's like, but yeah, put that there. And then one who is, I would say, could fully see spiritually speaking, they're like, what do you know about this? And what do you know about that? And there's a lot of things I still don't know. But in standing back and allowing the work to do what it does, there's things I think I touch on that even I am mentally and spiritually alien to, but others may pick it up and will definitely enlighten me to look into certain things.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I think there's something that is very cathartic when you're able to practice or engage in something that puts you in a zone. I would imagine and assume that when you are creating art, you're in a sort of a emotional, mental, spiritual zone where the frontal cortex isn't on to a certain degree, and
Mhm.
um and you're just being in your body, and you're just being in the moment, and letting. I again would assume that you have, music on, or something in the background that's sort of helping you ride that mindfulness practice.
Yeah, I think it depends on my mood. On any given day of time. I typically like to have house music going, just personal favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also like modern jazz. So like Thelonious Monk, Miles Davis, Ornette Coleman, a lot of that stuff just um takes you somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I also love the work of Philip Glass and Steve Reich and a lot of minimalist composers. Um, and sometimes I'll just have Bach or Handel playing as well. So again, each day is kind of like, oh, let's see what, I
What's the mood?
what's the mood?
Well, let me rephrase that. I got two questions, and you could answer them in whatever orders you want. The first one
Sure.
is like, what's the mood in the city for artists right now, with sort of what's going on in our
Mm,
politics, and in our changing president. And well, let's start there. What, to your comfort level? Like, what is the mood?
what's happening?
Yeah, what is happening with artists in the city, or what are the artists talking about currently right now?
They're one continuing with their careers, they're continuing with their messaging. They know that they're needed, similar to when COVID happened and, this fool was in office at the time. Artists at that time people were flocking to them. People were purchasing more work from them at that time, which is I thought was a very interesting. I think people deeply knew that they needed to see inspiration. They needed to see purpose through the eyes of artists, and ways in which they could allow their grief to be visually understood by either purchasing or going to shows. I remember during that time there were a lot of art openings that were happening. I mean, they in the beginning began to be on Zoom or online. There were a lot of online shows, but then when things were beginning to open up a bit more, people even in mass, were going to openings. And but similar now, artists are continuing with things as, they're like the show must go on. Um, I will say for myself, there has been a bit of an uptick in sales and interest in the work. And especially, so I would say conceptually for me, the work is in two different lanes. One is just really continuing deeply within the Black and Brown male identity. And then the other is commenting on this current administration. Um, so those are the sort of the two paths things are going on for me. But in general, artists are saying hell no to this one, and they're like their FUs to him is to do their work, to, to do their work and to do their messaging and to enlighten people by continuing to exhibit, show, and share what they do online
Hmm. Hmm.
and reach the masses. So I would say that's pretty much the vibe here
Yeah,
in New York.
and I do feel like, painters and artists, like they've also used their mediums as forms of activism, as form of getting people aware. Do you sometimes feel like your art sort of skirts that line, or do you think your art is just strictly what it is for you, that it doesn't necessarily have to have a political meaning behind it?
Well, art to me is political in general. And even if you're not talking about politics, it always will comment on something socially. It just will.
Yeah.
Um, And so, and even the aspect of the business of art is, so where in talking about that, I feel for me, oftentimes it's the aspect of class and how people view art, especially in this country. Now, I would say in other parts of the world, art is so integrated, uh, integral, I should say. I'm sorry. I probably said that the other word wrong, but it's so weaved into everything. So people don't question the aspect of why this should be supported. In
Right.
this country, it is more of a status thing. Oftentimes, and what I've seen is a lot of you go to an opening, art opening, and there are mostly white people there. And, yes, there are people of color there now, more so than in the past, but if you look at the ratio, it's still a mostly white audience. And so I don't know. I want for me, my work to allow people to think, allow people to fully see themselves. I will say I've been told that oftentimes when people see the work, they feel, especially as a person of color themselves, they feel that they have been fully seen and understood as a person, which is the point of what I do. So that does make me happy. I just would like for the work to not be so always isolated from people in terms of the business of art, and more for me a thing in which I can work within the system and also work outside of it, where on the community level more so, uh, that people are being able to rather see what I do, um, on a more person to person basis, that kind of thing, on more on the ground. So.
Yeah, I do have to admit that seeing your art and seeing a person of color sort of look back at me in this very beautiful way, it there's something that invokes, there's like this spark that happens, or this sort of sparkling energy that's just like, yes,
Mhm.
that's beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
just yeah, and I think just the way that you just portrayed the black body is just, it's just very elegant. There, even if it's of a male who's sort of nude, it's still very elegant, right?
Mhm.
And there's this sort of grace to it,
Yeah.
that's very visual.
Well, for me, we are graceful and elegant and of worth and power. Um, and oftentimes we see ourselves completely not as that. And I'm always in the business of elevating. Um, I want to always be in elevation mentally.
Mhm.
Um, I know that there is going to be the fight, so to speak, of those that are don't exist in that mentally, spiritually, that kind of thing. I understand that, there's ways in which for me I could protect myself and my energy when that happens. But uh I know for me, in terms of making what I do, that is always the point. That will always be the message. That will always be the reasoning for what I do.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have a spiritual practice?
No, I don't. Yeah. I think some people think I'm a Santero.
You do
I think
have
it's
that vibe.
yeah.
And at first I was
And
like,
the candles
is
in
that
the
his
back.
altar over there?
It's an altar. So for I will say, so this was probably a little over a decade ago. I did go into a pharmacy that had like a Santera that was there. But yeah, and I wanted to get a San Martin because my father's from Panama, and I was like, at the time I was like, I wanted it in my apartment, and I was happy to have this place, this and the other, and I was like, this would be a great gift to myself and for the space, whatnot. So I saw the San Martins I had there. They weren't really calling to me, but I saw um, Alegua instead, and I was intrigued of the dark skin, the black eyes, the red loincloth. There was something, and the arms raised to the side, the other. I asked her, who he was, and she explained to me who he was, and that he opens doors and yada yada yada. Without even really thinking, I was like, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get him. So my mentor, Leo, had told me who he was, and he also explained to me you could either use his good side or his bad side. I was like, well, I'm only playing on the good, the good side. So the issue head that he usually holds, you have to take that out. And I will say I do make requests uh, to him. And candling is a form of my connection to him. For me, it is helps me to stay grounded, to make my manifestations continue to thrive. Um, and in all of this, there's also lessons I have to learn.
Hmm.
And some lessons are a bit easier for me to grasp, and others are, I'm still learning. But I would say, my road is not like it's a more long, as calm as possible, peaceful road to what I feel is success.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have as much money as say other artists yet, but I would say because I have learned through doing this practice as well as also just learning how to fully submit to my work, my artwork, that is. It's allowed me to understand what I'm doing a lot better,
Hmm.
and not to doubt myself too. If I could say the biggest lesson I've been learning continually for quite some time is how to take doubt out of the equation completely and just have faith.
That that sometimes scary to to have faith in the unknown and hoping and that it'll turn out okay.
Well, the thing is, I grew up in the, Black Baptist church, said and the other, the whole idea of Jesus and God was instilled in my head. And by age 14, I knew that I could not continue with this. It's like, this is just not, I'm not connected to this. I do believe in God, though. I do believe in the idea of God and God consciousness and just any other. If I can say I do envision God as both sexes. Um, and that might be a very binary way of looking, but you do have to have the male and female uh, uh, consciousness in order for, say, the earth to function. Uh, you know, I do believe socially, people have the right to be in the body that they need to be in. So I'm very supportive of how one identifies. And also, if say one is trans, that is their journey. And it's a very important journey for them to be in. The human story is a multifaceted story.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah.
think being a person for me, right? Speaking for myself, I think being a person of color and being a queer
Mm,
person, that in itself is a sense of activism, right? Is a sense of going against counterculture, is going against the norm and whatever that looks like, and the norm within the religious aspect. Because I too sort of grew up in a Baptist, sorry, Protestant church, and
mhm,
every Sunday would go to would go to church and listen to the preacher, and I think it just did not resonate with me in the sense of how my spiritual practice is now, where I'm more ancestor based. I have an altar for renovating, honoring my ancestors, and
mhm.
being more connected to myself and the earth and sort of spiritual energies and dreaming. And so I feel like artists are closer to a witchy practice because
True.
because I feel
Very
like
true.
it's very sort of magical to create something that just wasn't there before, right?
Yeah.
It's very powerful to sort of have something in your mind and then have the intention and the energy to actually create it to manifest. Like that is like that's some mojo, high mojo right there, in my opinion.
Well, the arts, especially if the work is very honest, can truly move people, especially in dire times, you know. So I could see why the Nazis hated a lot of the work, the artists and the work that was made at that time. It was a lot of the work that was made at that time was very counterculture,
Yeah.
and it really showed the angst and uh, the real feelings and emotions that were going on in the public,
Yeah, and
especially at the
it asks people to think, right? To think
yeah,
outside of the norm, right? And
yeah,
I think that's what art asks you to do is to like you're looking at this piece and it's asking you to really stretch not only your imagination but your feelings and your and the wisdom of the life that you've accumulated and to connect with it to some degree. Um, but
yeah.
um, as we're getting ready to wind down, I always ask folks if you were mentoring a blooming artist, what are some things, advice, feedback, mentoring skills you would impart to them in starting in this particular field?
To trust in that process, trust in the work. If you are not selling, don't be dismayed by that. I literally had a very that conversation a couple of days ago with a young artist, photographer. I said to him, "It's like you have to." I was like, "You already have a I don't want to say I don't want to say style. I was like, but you have a vision, and that's very clear. And you know what you're doing as well. And I was like, trust that, and just continue doing this, going to openings and meeting people, and but like don't have a vision in your head exactly what it looks like. And that was a lesson I had to learn. I started to learn that lesson much later in life
Hmm.
by my mentor Leo. It's a thing of if you have a vision of what it looks like, life has a funny way of throwing a bunch of obstacles at you your way. And you'll end up being dismayed, or you get upset and frustrated at what you thought you were supposed to have. I don't ever have a vision of what a show will look like. I don't have a vision of what the art will look like. I have ideas, but if you view your career in that way, it never ever will be the exact thing that you thought it would be. There are some things that are going to happen that you need to go through as an artist to really be a your true and full success in what you do. So
And I feel like I'm hearing a little bit of and I sort of talk about this on this channel, the sense of letting go of perfectionism, right? Like letting go of this assumption that yes, I do want it to look this way. I do want it to have this flavor to it, but holding on to that ideal of it need to be perfect in that way, I think can be very distressing when you do find it not going the way that you assumed it should be going, and that could be discouraging, I think, for some people because it's like, why can I not let it why can I not make it to look this way or to have this way, right? Like letting go of perfectionism.
yeah, I mean, there's a painter, I won't say his name, but this was about some time ago. This is his thinking. And I said to him, I was like, the work will always, it always will tell you what it wants. You can try every inch, every stroke, do it a certain way, and the work will lead, not you.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a cryptic, shady thing
No,
to
no.
say to an
It's
artist,
no,
but
no. It's the
it's the
concept
truth.
of letting go of control, right? Like
Yeah,
letting go of the control to achieve perfectionism. Like it's really like you said. I think it's trusting the process, and then I do believe like we all have this internal guide that, either angel, ancestor, spiritual guide, power
Hmm.
animal, whatever you want to call that internal piece of you that is able to reach over and help you create something that you didn't think that you could. Um, but like you said, it's really trusting the process,
Yeah,
um, and letting go of control.
exactly. You know, doing that with your with any career you do, you are gonna help lots more people, a lot more people, I should say,
Yeah.
in doing that. Um, and you should think of your career as sharing with people. If you're gonna envision anything like that, envision what your career rather, envision that. Envision that you're helping people, whatever that career is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where can folks find you? I know I found some of your art on like network.com, I think it was. And then like your I know your Instagram. But if to your comfort level, where can folks find your artwork?
I will say the only place to look is the Black Iconic on Instagram. I will at some point this year have my own website. When it's ready, it will be announced. But the Black Iconic is the place and really the only place to go. I mean, if you just Google my full name, Ricardo Osmondo Francis.
That's how I found that interview on
Yeah.
the Broken Historical Society.
Yeah. And there's other interviews on YouTube and this and the other. I guess people want to hear what I have to say. I don't know.
So I had you come on. I'm like, I want to hear what you got to say.
I mean, I like to share. And I like this format too. People need to speak to each other more too.
Yeah.
And I think there's a powerful way in which people engage with each other. And I think a lot of good could be done out of a Zoom interview or a Zoom meeting, regardless of
Yeah.
what it's for. It's just people have to be in the mindset in which, they want to do good things or constructive things, I should say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do have to agree with you. I think because of COVID, it's made me very aware of how I personally can be very isolating myself from only because it's like I'm living my life, right? Like I'm going to work, I'm doing errands,
Hmm.
I'm doing chores, and I'm out in the garden, whatever I'm doing. I I like my solitude, and during
Me
COVID,
too.
it really made me realize like I need to make a little bit more effort in reaching out to
Hmm.
my family, making a little bit more effort in reaching out to my community, and so it's one of those things where I'm glad I'm in an age where I have access to like a platform like this to be able to reach out and be like, Ricardo, come to my little channel and talk about your artwork.
I'm honored. Thank you. I again, these are helpful for me, and I think they're helpful for any artists that are doing what they do. Talking to people about what you do, which oftentimes is very difficult for artists to put into words what they do. It's just good practice. It helps them to communicate their ideas more distinctly to the public. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate you for this. Thank you.
And so for other folks who want to stalk Ricardo in a respectful, loving way, I'll have all his information down below. And if you've gotten to this far, please give a thumbs up or subscribe because the algorithm I need can filter more folks this way. Ricardo, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your beautiful artwork. And if folks haven't seen your artwork, they're missing out because it's very beautiful, very very beautiful.
Thank you, Ashton. I truly appreciate your time and consideration. And if you need me to come back, let me know.
Yes, please. See you, folks.